Okay, we are live. All right, we are live here now with the Classic Faserip podcast. We're going to start here in a few minutes. Just we're waiting for a few people to trickle in. So this is the YouTube exclusive for those out there. But we'll sit here and wait just to see if people come in and listen to us or not. But because it usually takes a few minutes for the live feature to filter out to people, and those that are subscribed to our channel will take their time. Go, oh, what's this? Oh, I'll get to it sooner or later. So I have the chat open here on my laptop so I can look and watch just in case somebody wants to say something. So hopefully our good friend Stephen Watson will stop by and give his 2 cents on things.
Yeah, that's Stephen Watson. He's
a good old boy.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, we'll start the podcast now. We don't want people just sitting around watching us pick our nose and stare at the backgrounds that we all have up. All right, 3, 2. The Classic Faserip podcast. I am one of your hosts, Vince, sitting alongside Keith. Keith, how are you doing this week?
I am doing well, Vincent. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. We're back. This is episode number 18, I believe. 18, yes, 18.
Magic 18.
Yes, we're actually on a regular schedule now, so people can actually look forward to our podcast on a bi-weekly basis yet again. And we will continue to do this going forward. Coming here from YouTube, the Evil DM, just search for me, and you can watch all the live shows starting with episode 6. No, actually, it's episode 4, 3, 3, because 1 and 2 got nailed for copyright because of the music we used, and I've been having a problem getting it up. So on the YouTube, every time I try to put it up, they're like, "Nope, copyright," and they pull it down. So I'm like, "Oh, come on." So I got to try to find the original files and get those back up. Because a lot of people were asking, what happened to episodes 1 and 2? Well, that's the reason 1 and 2 are not up. But the rest of them are there, including the ones we started live streaming, which was episode 6. And then Keith came along, I think, right after that, I believe. Or maybe later on. I know you're season 2, or volume 2, I should say. Because we're in volume 2 right now. I never knew... How do the volumes work in comics? Do you know how those work, or they just kind of randomly change them whenever they want? New writer, new volume?
Originally, I think they changed them over time. Nowadays, I think they wait until they cancel an issue and then bring up another one.
Yeah.
You would have so many, after so many restarts of various comics throughout the last 20 years, it's a wonder they're not on, like, volume 19 or volume 20.
You would think they would be at this point.
Oh yeah. Some of that stuff is just, some of it gets really out of hand.
Well, yeah, especially with a lot of those Superman, and Superman would probably be up to volume 2000 at this point. But anyway, Action Comics, because he was originally there, so I guess it doesn't really count. Anyway, so let's do things first, news and stuff like that. We don't have any email, but if you want to ask us a question, go ahead and email askthedm at theevildm.com. That'll come directly to me, and I can save it for the podcast if you have a question. We do not have any comments. If you have iTunes, please head over to iTunes to give us a rating. I checked. We did not have anything new. So, unfortunately, I should say fortunately, Apple is getting rid of iTunes, which means they're just going straight to an app that people can have on their phone now to download the podcast, which will make it a lot easier for those out there that can't stand iTunes, which is like 90% of the world at this point, I think, because it's so clunky and takes up so much resources on your phone and or laptop at this point. So yeah, community news. You had some projects you want to shout out about?
Oh yeah. Well, the unofficial creative Canon group has got a couple things in the works. One of which is going to be out in the next, I think, week or two.
Oh yeah.
They're slapping a number designation on it, and I think it will be out, if not next weekend, probably the following. And that's the one-shot adventure series, and it's actually a series of one-shot adventures over different time periods by Chris Tyner, and it is pretty spectacular. You have a 1970s retro Larry, Mary, Dirty Harry sort of adventure with a bunch of the '70s adventure characters, whether it be Luke Cage and Daredevil and that bunch, or the 1940s characters versus. Uh, well, I don't want to ruin the surprise, but there's some. Let's just call it surprise cameos in the various adventures that people who were from series that were done at Marvel, but not necessarily Marvel canon. So Chris took a couple liberties with that sort of stuff, and probably got that lesson from me if he got it from anybody else, because I did that sort of thing with the Golden Age source book, and
Revealing secrets.
yeah, so it's nice. Andrew Goldstein is hard at work at the marvelous Marvel. Can't remember what the last part is. Uh, well, in this case, it's the deities of the Marvel universe. In this one, deals with, amongst others, the Egyptian gods. I think it's Africa is this one, if memory serves. I helped write the Egyptian gods. Well, back when I was doing Hercules and the Olympian gods, and Thor and gods of Asgard. And the intention was, because Marvel had only really ever focused on those three pantheons, I was going to stick them all in the same book. And then somebody said, well, hey, you should really separate Asgard and the Olympians. And then we just took the Egyptians out of there because Andrew wanted to do a whole series of books about the different pantheons. So he did book 3, and book 4 is quickly coming to a close, I think. And that'll be out within probably the next month and a half. Probably, if not sooner.
Okay. I did see in the creative team when I was perusing through the creative project team when I was perusing through there, which, by the way, whoever changed the graphic on that group, thank you very much, because now it's easy to determine the two of them apart, because Facebook always cuts the names off when you're looking for them. And I'm always like,
oh, yeah,
which one is which? Because they have the same logo, and thank you for changing that logo. Now I can actually look at them and go, aha. But yeah, in that group, I saw that, was it Steve Jolly, our guest the last time, was working on this Supernatural book, I believe?
That has been in the works for a while. I think a couple different people have worked on it. It started off as something else, and I think there was a second book or a second series that was going to be very similar, and they ended up merging the two, and I'm not sure exactly where it is now. That's outside of my wheelhouse. I liked Doctor Strange from a distance, so that was about it. Between that and uh, Werewolf by Night, that's about it, the extent of my Marvel occult characters.
Yeah,
That was
I was gonna say,
yeah.
I probably, as far as like you said, Doctor Strange did. Ghost Rider, maybe it'd be
Yeah,
Ghost
yeah.
Rider be the furthest thing I've got to Supernatural for Marvel.
Oh yeah, and I mean Ghost Rider for me, the '90s version, Dan Ketch. I liked that only because I was a little too young to be reading um, the Johnny Blaze stuff as a kid. I read more Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Avengers, that sort of more mainstream stuff. I was never a big horror comic guy, and there are some people who eat that stuff up like it's a breakfast cereal, and that's just not my thing. Um,
Johnny Blaze was
no, I
probably
don't
the
have anything.
first.
I don't have a problem with it per se,
It's just not your cup of
but
tea. That's all.
it's not my cup of tea.
Johnny Blaze was the Ghost Rider that I actually grew up reading when I read Ghost Rider on and off. I don't know how or why. I remember just reading Johnny Blaze, so
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
guess
And
hand me
now
down comics.
I knew who the character was, and I can remember I obviously had read some because by the time the Dan Ketch version came around in, like, I think 89, 90, I not only did I know who he was, but I was familiar enough with the backstory that I knew that it had to be a new Ghost Rider. So
I'm trying to think. It was probably because I was playing this game And I remember at the time we were all into drawing our characters out because what every kid does that. They all want to draw their character some point in some game. And I
Oh yeah.
remember did Ghost Rider have his own? I don't have the original cards. Did Ghost Rider have his card? Or there was a bunch of cards, like trading cards in the maybe early 90s that had the power levels on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the Ghost Rider one there was a Johnny Blaze one. And I remember for some reason, I just kept trying to draw that and trying to draw that. And I remember sitting in my den in my parents' house when I was a kid. I was probably at that point was early teens, maybe a little before that, maybe a little, I don't remember exactly, but I was sitting there trying to draw it and trying to draw it. And finally I did it. And I remember sitting there and my stepfather comes in and I'm like, look, I did it. And he goes, yeah, so? And he just kept walking. I'm like, all right, you don't like comics. Screw you, dude. But yeah, that kind of frustrated me, and I stopped drawing at that point. I probably could have continued drawing if I didn't.
I could well imagine that. Yeah, I had similar reactions from my stepfather about stuff. I talked to him about, Nightcrawler being my favorite X-Man, and he's like, "Why does he look like a demon?" Well, that's just how they drew him. He looks like a demon. I don't like that. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was what he didn't like about it because he was heavily a Christian person, so maybe he didn't like Ghost Rider because of that reason. Who knows?
That could be it.
Because don't forget, during that time frame, late '80s and the '90s, that Satanic Panic thing was still hanging around from D&D, even though it was early '80s that happened. But I still remember getting that talk when I was around high school. My mother saying, "You play Dungeons and Dragons every time, don't you? And that other Marvel game and that DC game." I go, yeah, they're role-playing games. She's like, I just had a talk with the priest in our family, and he said that that's very bad. And I wanted to ask you a couple questions. I'm like, all right. And she says, now, when your character dies, do you get upset and start to cry and get upset? I'm like, first of all, and this is 80s now, so people don't get offended. I said, I'm a boy. Boys don't cry. Or I'm a man. We don't cry. I'm not a PU, fill the rest in yourself. And my mom looked at me. Okay, I was like, when my character dies, I don't care. I make up another character. They're just pieces of paper.
It's words. Yeah, it's words on a piece of paper.
I said I make up so many characters. We play so many different games. I showed her every one of the games we played, and I had a folder of all characters, and she looked at them with their nose up like that, that whole thing like that, and she said, "Okay." And that was the last I ever heard of it. Well, except one other time when I got in trouble because I didn't take the dog for a walk and I was reading the Unearthed Arcana book from first edition of D&D. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm reading a book for my game tomorrow. She's like, you're reading that devil book. Get the dog out. I'm like, okay. That was the only time I heard anything like that. But yeah.
And my stepdad was the same way. My stepdad we got into it one time. And he said something. He was like, well, that's satanic bullshit. And I'm like, pardon my French. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, you're more interested in all that gaming stuff. And it's like, my mom was like, he's here at the house on Friday night. We know where he is. He's not out running the streets. He's not doing drugs.
Yeah.
He's not smoking. He's a good kid, doesn't get into trouble. If he wants to read comic books and play role-playing games in the attic, that's his business, and it's okay. And God bless my mom, because my mom was just like, she listened to it for about 2 minutes one time. Was like, okay, this is obviously not my cup of tea, but you're not out running the streets setting things on fire, so this is good.
Yeah, exactly. I would every day after school we played games. We went right to my friend's house. We went into his basement, and every day we just played whatever between Marvel, DC, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Robotech, D&D, Palladium Fantasy. Everywhere.
It was you and Lucas and a couple of the other kids.
No.
But hey, let me tell you, and I get the biggest kick out of Stranger Things because of all that. But and I'm sitting here going, and I've always said, a little bit off topic here, but I've always said that if they were ever going to do a Dungeons and Dragons movie, that's the way to do it. Start it off with a bunch of kids playing Dungeons and Dragons and have the main stars of the movie be the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Vin Diesel, whoever actors playing the characters in the game, so that when the little fat kid who's playing the barbarian screams, "Yeah!" you have Vin Diesel going, "Yeah!"
But
I
what?
said that would be the greatest way to do it because you would actually interest people in. You would go see a movie if he was still alive that had Robin Williams as a wizard because Robin Williams played Dungeons and Dragons.
And he played World of Warcraft too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, Will Wheaton plays Dungeons and Dragons. So all these guys who play the different games. If you could actually get a group of them to actually play that in a movie, I think that's how your best bet at doing a Dungeons and Dragons type movie.
I wish, speaking of that, I wish that they took the movie Gamers The Darkness Rising and put that in the movie theater because I think that's probably the best example you can get of a group sitting around playing D&D. And it describes exactly what you said. People sitting at the table, and then they flash over to the game, and then they have a different set of people. Some of them play themselves in there, but others play others. And they act out like when the guy goes, yeah, you could see the character doing it just like that. So we do have
I've never seen that, but I mean it always seemed to me like it would be the best way to do it because you would actually have a reason for people to be interested in what was going on. You could actually explain certain aspects of the game mechanics without going in depth to it. Like saving throws. Oh, but you got to make a saving throw. What's a saving throw? And then,
Okay, so go ahead and go to YouTube later on or whenever you have a free moment, free 2 hours, and Google Gamers The Darkness Rising, and you will see everything you've ever wished for that you're describing right there in a D&D type movie.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Be prepared to laugh your butt off because it's very funny. Anyway, we do have a question to get us back on track here a bit. We have a question from Big G. He wants to know, have any of you read the series from Marvel when they made The Son of Ares? I have not.
He's talking about Phobos 2. They had previously done a son for Ares and then killed that character off, and then he was basically a little kid who I've read it and I can't remember who the villain was that basically turns him on Ares. And it was a heck of a series because it sort of redeems Zeus and it redeems Ares and that character, and it was one of the Japanese gods was the bad guy because Phobos ends up using grass cutter, the katana, that the Sunny Chiba sword. If you should meet God on your way and were to attack him, that sword, and it is absolutely, it's a great series. It's a great series. As a matter of fact, I adapted that character when I did the Olympian gods in the Hercules and Olympian source book.
Right.
So that was one of those where I'm familiar with the story he's talking about. It's very well written. And I was not a huge fan of Ares when Marvel brought him in as a character, but that particular series I enjoyed. So yeah, I've read it and I know what he's talking about.
Never have read it, but there's a couple things I have not read. But you will be happy to know that I did get my grubby little paws on Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2 to peruse through so I can be more prepared the next time when we go over Secret Wars 2.
You mean rather than just talking about the fact that the only thing that came out of Secret Wars was Spider-Man changing his costume and then breaking up Colossus and Kitty Pryde?
There's probably more to it that I didn't know about, but apparently I just really strongly disappointed one of our fans named shagmatthews, who is very highly on the DC side, but does like the Marvel side too, and went, I need to run my butt out there and go get those comics and get caught up. So, Shag, yes, I did. Thank you. Shag's a good guy. Runs some good DC podcasts. You should check him out sometime. I'll share you some of his links for the Who's Who podcast he does and the Justice League International, what is it? Bwahaha podcast. Really funny. He goes over those comics. Good job in those.
That was my Justice League in the 80s.
Yeah, it was. All of us.
Me and a buddy wanted to do the Justice League Australia. And our idea was we were going to put Amazing Man in it.
Oh my God.
From the Amazing Man comics, and we had a great idea, but it just didn't pan out. So.
Aww. Anyway, let's get on to the meat of the show here. So, as some people pointed out, the graphic when I made it up sent out we're gonna be producing an episode called "Running Norman Humans" because I was doing it really quickly and didn't spell check like an idiot. But I changed it back to normal humans. So, and I think it was, who did I say that pointed it out? Oh, I forgot his name. I apologize.
Killian Gray.
Killian Gray, who said it was Tidial Norman
Yeah.
humans. So, but anyway, we joke. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna flip over to. Let me change the scene here for those folks looking at home. There we go. And those are listening can go over and download free online Dragon Magazine 197, as I have that up on the screen for those viewing on the YouTube. So you can pick your nose all you want, Keith. Nobody can see you.
Cool deal.
I have the Marvel Phile by Stephen. I think it's pronounced Shend. I've always pronounced it that way. Or Stephen.
Could be.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Some of these names. Apologize, Stephen. And maybe you'll write in and yell at me. I don't know.
You know, he is part of the creative group.
Oh, great.
And, yeah,
So now he can definitely
candidate.
yell at me. Hi, Stephen.
I don't think he'll yell at you. He seems like a really nice guy.
He wrote this article. It's entitled "Heroes of the Streets Arrive." I guess this is during the time frame when Marvel saw an uptick of average vigilante justice in the streets of Marvel. We had the Punisher in full swing of just out. The best I could describe the Punisher was outrageous, crazy. I'm going to just street justice the crap out of everything, but still keep it within the comics code, of course, until they went to Max, and then apparently Max did not have to follow the comics code, but whatever.
No.
I didn't know they could do
that. And here's a quick analysis of any Punisher comic book from the late 80s, early 90s. Punisher sees bad guy. Punisher shoots bad guy. Punisher goes on to next bad guy. Ad nauseum, insert random cameo, fade to black, closing credits. There you
go. Speaking about Punisher of the late 80s, early 90s, I did go, like I said to you, I was going to go to North Texas Comic-Con after work to go check that out. I did manage to get there before it got too busy. Picked up a lot of good stuff. One thing I got to pick up that I had when I was a kid that hung on my wall for so many years was the Punisher issue Wanted. That brown cover of his face, and it had like his profile, wanted by the police. I don't know if you remember that War Journal cover.
I was never a huge Punisher fan. I liked Wolverine.
It was plastered over a lot of comics. That's why a lot of people remember that cover.
I mean, I think I remember the one you're talking about, but it was just never, like I said, I was never a huge Punisher fan.
Oh, yeah, I was.
Oh, no, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have friends who to this day are still huge Punisher. And, it was just one of those things where it just wasn't my cup of tea. Now, Daredevil, yeah. I liked Daredevil, but I just didn't like, and I don't know why I didn't like the Punisher. I think probably because in my mind he was a Mac Bolan ripoff. He had the Mac Bolan, Mac Bolan had the special van. Punisher got a special van, It just seemed like they were...
But he had a microchip.
played by Wayne Knight in the movie, so,
Hey, he was a good pick. He actually fit that role.
Yes, he did.
But yeah, I was a huge Punisher fan. I cannot read Punisher now. The guy writing it, Rosenberg, I believe his name is. I may be getting that wrong, but I think he was the one recently writing the arc for Punisher that just came back after the whole Punisher was working for Hydra with Baron Zemo type thing going on. I don't know how caught up you are with comics right now for Marvel. Yeah. Anyway, I tried to read that and I was just like, nope, I can't read this. This is too wordy for me.
Here's my problem with that. I want someone to explain to me, whether they post it in the notes, they send us an email, whatever, how that makes any damn sense. Because I can't think of a way that would make sense that the Punisher would, the way he's been written for the last 30 years, that it would make sense that he would go, I'm going to team up with Baron Zemo.
Yeah,
from Hydra.
I
This
don't.
seems like a really cool idea.
I missed that whole story arc, so I don't know. I just saw recently, maybe it was like a year ago, Punisher #1. I was like, okay, perfect jumping on point, and apparently it was not because it was a continuation off a major story arc, and I was just like, 10 issues, and I'm just like, yeah, this is not my Punisher. No offense to those out there that really like it, but it just wasn't for me. But yeah, back to the Marvel Phile. Yeah, but the Marvel had an uptick in vigilante justice, and they had things like the Punisher going on. They had Hawkeye. They had Black Widow. They had Code Blue, which was a big series. They had Agents of Shield kind of in and out of comics. I don't know if Agents of Shield had its own comic in the '90s that I remember.
Night Thrasher from New Warriors.
Yep.
Daredevil. Any of the characters who were Nomad, Falcon, Jack Flag, the AmeriCop, all of these Captain America characters that you look at now and go, really? They did that? AmeriCop, huh? So, there's nothing wrong with any of those characters. If you want street level vigilante justice, this is the article really for you. And this is actually, I actually use this when I'm creating just normal characters like a Batman type character or a Nightwing type character to use to sort of point towards DC for a second. But I mean, if you want a character who is more that level of justice, or they're running around doing street level stuff, this is a perfect article for that.
Yeah.
Because it actually works better than like using just a high tech wonder, or was it chart #2 for normal humans with Max of Excellence. I mean, if you want more of a, well, Moon Knight, I guess Moon Knight would be a good example of this. If you want a Moon Knight type character who has some gadgets and doesn't really have too much in the way of powers, or maybe he has some couple minor powers, this would work perfect for that. It's all just more of a technologically based character, more of a Batman or a Night Thrasher or a Hawkeye type character than, say, an Iron Man type character or War Machine.
I'd like to consider it more of a high gadget type person than a technology person. I know that's kind of the same thing, but looking at how this is written, I see it more of a gadget person, the person that just uses gadgets.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
They list in this article a couple things. We'll go over this right now. Your vigilante hero is defined by the following guidelines. Your hero primary abilities, the Faserip, are within maximum human limits. See pages 5 to 6 of the advanced set. Judge's book for human limits. Your character carries a weapon, weaponry, or technology that is available to the general public, unless the hero belongs to Code Blue or Shield. I don't recall Code Blue having major technology. I would say Shield, yes, but Code Blue?
Not that I remember, but it's been a while since I looked at the Marvel Universe stuff for him.
If your hero has gizmos, whether a shield, gun, or a web line of her own devising, grants her abilities of less than amazing rank.
In other words, it's limited to amazing rank.
Yeah. These guidelines are not concrete, but they serve as distinguished street-level heroes from other gadget-laden humans like those in the Avengers. While it's true that Captain America, Hawkeye, and Black Widow don't have powers, their equipment is far beyond the available level of technology for most street heroes. That's because they, Avengers. They got that Tony Stark gold going on there.
That's it. They go do a job, and then, he gives a coin, just like Ned said in Homecoming.
They add a new origin called Normal Human to the list of origins table that you can roll on. So now we have Altered Human, Mutant, High Technology, Normal Human, Robot, and Alien. Now, I believe Normal Human was added into the Ultimate Powers book, right?
I think so. Yeah. I may be wrong in that this actually came out well after the Ultimate Powers book. So
that's right. This is 93, correct? Yeah.
If it's been added, I'll tell you where you can find it most likely, and that's assuming that he knew about it. Steve Minix did the character creation book. I think it's
Oh yeah.
one MAC5.
Yeah.
I'm probably getting the numbering wrong. But it was basically a condensed version of the Ultimate Powers and some of Realms of Magic, and took all of the new stuff from the Ultimate Addendums. But I don't know if it actually did this one as well. I can't right off the top of my head remember. So it's just one of those things where if this doesn't pop up in there, definitely check out Dragon Magazine. Was it 197?
197. Yeah.
Yeah, because it is an absolutely fantastic article, and it works wonders for that particular subset of characters.
Yeah.
If you want a Night Thrasher or a Nighthawk character or a Daredevil or whoever, you have it. You have the option for it, and it works out really, really well.
All right. So, continuing along, this is mostly used for the type of, like you said, fighting heroes devoted to fighting crime and injustice, though this type of hero was mostly prevalent during the comics of the Golden Age. There has been a resurgence of non-powered costume heroes in the 90s. And it goes on to say any powers they might have gained through equipment only. So,
Mm-hmm.
so they list some examples like Punisher, Silver Sable, Union Jack, blah, 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 normal humans. So there are things that normal humans get. Normal humans add 1 rank to any of the 3 primary abilities, or 3 ranks to any 1 ability, or 2 ranks to 1 and 1 rank to basically any combination thereof of those, provided their abilities do not exceed the maximum human levels, or limits, excuse me. And then we have a column on the right here. Let me just scroll up a bit. There we go, it's on screen. Column number 6, which is the normal human ranks table that you now roll under for your abilities.
That's it.
And it actually lists on the right-hand side the maximum strength level, maximum levels for certain things such as strength, endurance, ability, fighting, reason, and intuition. Notice it's missing anything else.
Well, that's because normal humans technically could have higher than amazing. And that's one of those things where they have statted out certain characters. Like for instance, if you go and look at all this in World War II, the module, the Kang module.
Yep.
Hitler's in it. Hitler has a psyche of like monstrous.
Well,
okay,
that fits in
I
pretty
think
well.
Einstein is in either that one or one of the later books with an amazing reason. So I mean, you could conceivably a normal person could be that smart or that willful. I think is what they were trying to get at. So that's why they didn't put a limit on reason and psyche. But as to intuition and endurance, agility, fighting, strength, all of that has been clearly defined as basically Captain America level.
Yeah.
Because Captain America falls right at that. He's superhuman for a human, but not superhuman for Spider-Man.
So rolling on the chart, you can only get incredible as your highest rank, just rolling. So that's where they give the ability to add 2 to 3 ranks on various abilities, and obviously you have to look at the maximum human level so you don't go over it. So like you said, they list monstrous and amazing on here, which you can't roll, but you can obviously get to those levels if you had gotten, say, remarkable for your psyche and added all 3 levels to get monstrous. Get that 63 in monstrous. So we have that. Okay, also, which another thing that these things kind of really at first threw me off and annoyed me about it, but then just common sense takes into play here. Normal humans gain 3 additional talents. These do not count towards the maximum rolled on the secondary tables below. So now we have a secondaries table that you roll once for the powers, which actually aren't powers, once for the talents, which are normally done as talents, and then once for the contacts. But the thing that annoyed me about this was, okay, so you get, where did I say? 3 additional talents. Now, these are free, not counting against the maximum. So say I roll a 10, okay? According to this chart under talents, 3/6. So I start with 3, but I already have 3, so I have 6. So technically, my maximum would be 9 in this case. which I don't know why they wrote it this way. It's just so dumb the way
You
they
know,
wrote
and
it.
it probably would have been better phrased. Maximum. These don't go towards your maximum, but rather are bonus talents. And I see exactly what you're saying. You know, and that's one of those things where I've always had a problem with the talents for the game, because the talents try to limit you. You know, obviously you don't want someone overpowered. You know, you don't want a character coming in. He's got 15 talents. He can do everything. Okay, that's difficult to deal with in any game when you have someone playing that sort of character,
Yeah.
or even have that sort of character in a game. So, you know, the idea of somebody having a lot of talents to begin with is something you got to sort of be careful of. But my issue was always, you know, 5 talents, 6 talents. Okay, Captain America probably has more than that. Do the martial art talents all count as 1 talent each, or do they all count as 1 talent under martial arts? You know, the game also says that marksman doesn't add to weapon specialist, but Hawkeye gets that bonus. Now I understand it's Hawkeye, but if it doesn't apply to regular PCs, why should it apply to the characters from the book? You see what I'm saying? I mean, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so I always try to treat the characters in my game, and I'm sure you do the same, as the hero. They're your heroes.
They are.
You know, even if they talk about Captain America's somewhere over there. You know, he's far off screen. He's not. They're not dealing with him. So let them be the heroes of your group. If you want to handle it so that they can start off with 12 talents, do it. If you can handle that, more power to you. If you can't, stay clearly defined within those rules, and you'll be okay. But I see, like I said, I see exactly what you're talking about, and I can remember reading that at first and thinking, well, how does that apply to this? Because you know that came out. I was probably 21, and I thought it was the greatest article ever. And I remember cutting it out of my Dragon magazine. The Dragon magazine's long gone. I have it somewhere in a like a perforated sleeve folder in a tucked into the back of a Ultimate Powers book that long since fell apart.
Nice. I also noticed that the talent chart seems to kind of go backwards. Because if you normally when you roll on these things, when the higher number you get, the more you get. But this one's kind of randomly placed. Like 1 to 10, you get 3/6. 11 to 35, you get 4/6. And then 36 to 65, you get 3/5.
Yeah.
And then it goes the next one 4/5. And then it goes down to 2/4. And then 3/4. I'm like, wait, shouldn't we be getting more as we get higher? I mean, I didn't quite get that too. And I was just like, I couldn't. It took me a while to wrap my head around it and just be like, all right, so we get 3 bonus ones. I just put 3 little dots and then I went roll. Okay, now I get 3 more of 6, but I'll actually have 6 right now, but I still have 3 more slots. And I wanted to bang my head against the wall because I didn't like the way it was written. I'm sorry, Steven, but I did not like the way it was written.
And it's like I said, I can remember reading it and thinking that's a little weird, but you know, I just adapted it to my own needs and went from there.
I also like to give talents on based on if a character comes up with a character, they can't do that. A player comes up with a good character background. I like to give talents based upon that. Like for example, I have a player in my group when we play that likes to play cops or military people, and he will pick a background based on that and describe his character. And a lot of times, I will give him certain things for free, like guns. He would definitely know how to do that. He shouldn't have to waste
Mm-hmm.
a slot on that because that's something he's probably been doing all of his life if he wanted to go into the military. I'm sure he probably grew up around guns, fighting, things like that. So I will try to do things to give him those things.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can go
And
listen to those things at
I,
realhigherdie.com. Go on.
I was just going to say I do similar. The other thing that there was one of the things that they did, and I really sort of liked in not the advanced set, but the the expanded basic set that they did, which
Yeah.
came after the advanced set,
Revised, you mean?
was that they did a multilingual skill that actually made sense.
Mm-hmm.
You had like I don't know, like D6 languages that you knew and were fluent in, or you would have like you could roll a D6 and that's how many additional languages you knew. And I thought, man, that's genius. Because they never get into like the level of whether you have fluency in it or whatnot. I just write it as, if your character is from Latveria, you could speak Latveria. Uh, if you want him to be multilingual and be able to speak English, okay, he's multilingual and can speak English as well. There's unless you're wanting to role play that, oh, pardon me, I do not know what I am saying, and that unless you're wanting to imitate Paulina Poroskova from her Alibi with Tom Selleck, I think you'll be okay.
Okay, normal humans also gain one additional contact. Again, this does not count against the maximum number of initial contacts rolled on the secondary abilities table. Again, we have 2/4, 2/5, 3/4, 3/5. Again, this goes all over the place. 4/4, 4/5. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what they were thinking with some of these tables, but I'm sure there was a reason. I'm sure it has to do with the rolling curve of the D100 percentile dice, and maybe they wanted it a certain way. I don't know. It'd be great. Yeah, maybe Steven will chime in and yell at me and, tell me what's up. But yeah, normal humans also have no innate powers. Any power rolled must be incorporated into their equipment and have a maximum rank of incredible for whatever power effect they have. So you do have a power rolling chart, and you can get anywhere between no powers to start for the first 1 to 35, or you can have 1 power to 3 powers to start with a maximum of 3 powers only. So this is where you and the GM have to sit down and figure things out. If you get 3/3 and be like, heck yeah, I got 3 powers. And then you got to sit there and go, crap, now what are these 3 powers? And this is where you can randomly roll them, or you can pick if the GM lets you pick. And then you have to figure out if is it like a gun, is it like wrist blasters, is it like something around your neck, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's like I said, this is when I did the Golden Age source book. This is why I put this rule set in there because I thought this was perfect for that time period. And it's one of those things where you sit down and when you have those sort of characters, whether it's that street level vigilante those characters from the 40s, half dozen of which are guys with a mask with a pistol shooting people. Obviously those guys have no powers, but you have the occasional character who, because he breathed gas number ZX35, he can now leap a quarter of a mile, or whatever strange power it is. So this is perfect for that sort of stuff. And it's, it takes a little bit of imagination. The GM and the player have to sit down and sort of come to an agreement on some stuff. Because obviously you don't want to go too crazy with it. But I mean, it could be as simple as body armor or some sort of defensive mechanism. Maybe he's got a rocket pack that allows him to fly and a strange helmet that makes him look like a hood ornament. Whatever you want to do, however you want to do it, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about fun.
They do go over some examples here in the power generation area, talking about the emotion control gun used against Carnage and crew in Spider-Man. Interesting. I don't remember that. And the Black Knight side screen armor that protected versus mental and psionic attacks. Ooh. I know one of my players in my group that probably wanted getting his little paws on that to protect against the psionic attacks and mental attacks of other players in our group in Marvel's X universe. And if he's listening, which he may or may not, but I know one of the other players is because he's in the chat listening, and he probably will mention it, may not mention it, but might be something for him to look into when we get back to playing those villains yet again. So
There you go.
power ranks are rolled on the random ranks table above, so you're using the same rank table as if when you did your Faserip. Talent generation is done normally the same way, except the only difference is instead of having good 8, you'd have good 10. You'd have the actual rank number itself, as opposed, well, what did they call that? The medium number or
Median number, yeah.
yeah.
And let me ask you this. When you're creating characters for your games, do you use the median number or the actual rank number?
When we first started the game, I was using basic revised rules or revised bacon,
Okay.
the blue book, the original blue book.
Gotcha.
So we were basically using the median number. But we have, when we're coming back into the game, and you'll be hearing those episodes soon, we will be using the advanced set. So I use the lowest rank number as per the rules in the advanced revised, whatever the heck the last one was with the new TSR logo.
Gotcha.
What did you do?
Always use the rank number.
Oh, really? Even in the advanced set?
I figured if the characters were the heroes of our adventures, and I know the intention is so that you can build the characters towards something. Karma use is so... Trying to save karma to advance anything in the game is a nightmare. And I never wanted to force people to have to, oh, well, it's a poor of 3. You've got to spend 40 points to get it to a poor of 4. And then, I don't mind the cresting and stuff like that. And I still think that's a tad overdrawn, but I didn't want to do the, a good of 8, and then you have to build it to a good of 9 and a good of 10. And you just spent 150 karma points to get 2 points of health. So to me, it was just give them the rank number. Just give them the rank number, because it's, in the end, unless it's like an unearthly or something like that, which you shouldn't have to begin with, what is 15 or 20 more health points?
Well,
it's not going to kill anything. So that was always my thought.
I have no problem with it. I like it because my group is very, very heavily into... Only way I could describe it is the D&D mentality of leveling up. And it's not a bad mentality to have. It's just some people have the, what's my progression? And they only see progression as leveling up. And I can't tell you how many times that I kind of went, this is Marvel. There's no leveling up.
Yeah.
Heroes in the comics stayed with their power and power levels for years and years. Yes, different writers added different things to characters, but those writers were years apart. So
that's it.
I think the cresting numbers, or as Stephen Watson is pointing out in our chat, starting numbers versus standard rank numbers. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
He's always there to help us out. Good job.
Well, he just had to come on the podcast sometime. Like, we invited him.
No, he's more than welcome to join us. And if he wants to, he doesn't have a video camera. He can sit here as a little icon representing his face. We have no problem with that. If anyone who in the community wants to come on the podcast that's interested in talking and has some good quality microphones and does not have video or has video is more than welcome to join us for a guest spot. At any point, reach out to myself or Keith, and we'll think about it with a $50 donation. You definitely can get on here.
Or buffalo mac and cheese, microwavable meal, or Hot Pockets, or Mountain Dew.
No, definitely not for me. You can do that for Keith, which Keith will donate $50 to me. Kidding. Steven is also saying he pretty much equates it the same way I do. Cresting is with leveling up, and that's why I kind of like the cresting ability. It gives the characters a sense of accomplishment and moving upwards and onwards, as opposed to, well, I gotta save all this karma to get from here to here, and that's gonna take a long time with the rules. So, because karma is not easily just like candy given out like experience in other games. So,
no. And if you're doing it right, it's divided by however many people in the group, not on an individual basis. So, if you defeat an unearthly foe, and it's 100 you get 100 karma for that. If there's 6 people in the group, it's divided amongst 6 people. That 100 points is divided amongst 6 people, not 100 points for each of them. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I just got to a point where I was like, yeah, and I would always, unless they just did something glaring nonsense that I'm looking at them going, are you out of your mind? Good role playing, meeting commitments, that sort of thing. I would always throw stuff like that in there. So you would automatically get like 45 karma just for that sort of stuff. And then you would get, the rest of the stuff got divided up amongst everybody so that there would at least be, you might get 75, 80. You might not. Just depends on what it is and where we are.
Yeah. Definitely. I like to give out karma in the game like to everybody individually. So if I'll just say, yeah, you guys each get 200 karma after like a couple sessions or something. Not every session because it's a little too much. I know people want to get that experience and level up, but you can't always do that. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much the article. 197 Dragon. Pick it up and read it. It's only a quick 2.5 pages if you take out some of the chart.
It's the greatest 2.5 pages that you'll ever see.
Yeah, there's.
Even if you're out there, come on the podcast. We'll get you on here.
What? Okay. They go over some villains and some sample campaigns, but I'll let you'll ruin that yourself. Sorry, read that yourself. Then we get some role playing reviews and we get some actually a game that I had found most recently, Cores, the World Book 1992 by Greg Porter. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's like it was the black book, kind of like the Traveler books, and it said Cores on it. It was a military type conspiracy type game from the early late 90s. No, early 90s. No, you never seen that? Okay, look that up sometime. It's fun. Anyway, so that's that article. Go ahead and download that, and hopefully you will get some use out of that for your campaign if you ever want to do street level games or things like that. And though I would say this is probably, say you want to play like a Batman, just like you were talking about Batman before, or Green Arrow or something. I want to say that Batman, Green Arrow would be a lot higher than a lot of these things here for maximum rank, especially if you look at the DC universe game itself and compare it, which some people have and I have, and they have a chart that goes back and forth between the two, and people like Batman do not add up to just human level. They're like well beyond because of reasons.
I mean, I did a version of Batman in the Golden Age book that was based on Batman, Captain America, John Byrne one shot, and I had people who took me to task for that, amongst other stats that I've done for the character. And I said, how it's presented in the book, this matches up, because they immediately realize that they're on equal footing, that they could continue the fight, but there's no point in fighting. They're smart enough to figure out, well, you're obviously not a threat. You're Batman. I'm Captain America. Vice versa. We should be working together against the Red Skull and the Joker. And it's all in how you want to present it. I mean, if you want the Grant, to use an example here, if you want the Grant Morrison Batman, obviously your Batman has higher than amazing, or amazing type reason. If you're doing more the Marshall Rogers, Denny O'Neil Batman, he might have ultimate skill detective, with an unearthly rank slapped on it. It just depends on what you want to do and how you present it. If you want him to be gadget laden from the 1960s TV show, there's a version for that too. You can do a version of that. So it just depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it. But Batman definitely probably is, I would say, he's like Captain America, borders on the superhuman for a human.
Yeah, he's been enhanced by the writers. We'll call it that, pretty much.
Exactly. And I mean, just in the same way that Green Arrow and Hawkeye are. I mean, Hawkeye in the movies and the comic books, I love the character. Don't get me wrong. I've been a fan of Hawkeye probably since the miniseries. I've always liked archery characters. So I've been a fan of Green Arrow and Hawkeye for quite some time. Uh, but the idea of being able to fight crime with just a bow is, there. Why don't you just shoot them? Why don't you just get a pistol and shoot them? There's more ammo, and you can throw, there's a certain finesse to it, and it looks cool. I have a friend who complains about the boxing glove arrow all the time. And I said, you have to realize first it's a comic book convention, all right? It's a staple of the comic books that they have these gadgets. I said, and the fact that you have boxing glove arrows, I said that's just something that they did in a DC comic book. And then they did it on the Arrow show. They actually did an episode where he used it, and I thought it was hysterical. I mean, I sent the gift to the same friend. I said, look what they did. It's functional. And he's like, shut up. No one's taught you. So it was funny. But it's all in how you want to present that stuff. You can either make it super realistic, or you can play fast and loose with it.
I definitely that trick arrow, yeah. All the trick arrows they used in those early, I think it was late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around there, before he became all broody and serious. I guess during the Kevin Smith run, which actually really was not bad. When Kevin Smith wrote that whole arc for Green Arrow for I think 2 years, I think it was. I don't know.
Actually, that happened prior to that. It was Longbow Hunt by Mike Greel.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, that's where all that started from. That's where he, they didn't want to use Star City, and they just put him in Seattle.
Seattle, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I keep forgetting about that.
I'm like, really? Come on. I know you want to, it's like when people try to do realistic superheroes. It's like, come on. It's a guy in a costume. The first time you get shot and have to go to a hospital, they're taking a mask off. They're not going to let you wear that in a hospital.
They go to back alleyway doctors. They never go to a hospital.
That's right. Get hepatitis from, unclean tools and all sorts of horrible stuff.
Yeah. But anyway, I can't. I tried to pick up Green Arrow recently when they redid the Rebirth, whatever the heck they're doing now. Went from New 52 to the New 52 to the Rebirth back to, I don't know what they're doing now. The DC Universe, I guess it's called. I tried a couple issues of Green Arrow, and he was too... They really heavily laid on the whole, I'm a social justice warrior. And it's like, nah, I'll pass on that, thanks. No, not for me.
We saw that before. It was called the 60s.
Yeah.
Denny O'Neil did it, and Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams did it back in Green Arrow and Green Lantern. And if you got him talking about fighting fat cats and everything else, it's like, that worked in the 60s, but you call somebody a fat cat nowadays, and people are going to look at you and go, what the hell's that? What's a fat cat? It
wasn't quite like that, but
yeah.
Just imagine what the people call themselves social justice warriors on Twitter and Facebook now. That's basically what he was mimicking. I was like, yeah, I get too much of this from real life. Down on the table it went. I'll pass on that comic book. Maybe some other people will enjoy it, but not me. Anyway,
that's it.
I meant to ask you back onto the normal humans, talent-wise. When you do talents, do you do the standard how it is in the book? And if it says they get a column shift, they get. Otherwise, they get like an ability rank number to it. Because I stick to the column shift. I've taken and adapted. I don't know if you ever heard the game 13th Age at all.
I haven't.
It was a game that came out during the D20 boom of Wizards of the Coast, 3rd edition D&D. And they have the thing called backgrounds, which kind of fit under the same thing as talents.
Okay.
And what you do is you and the player will sit down, and when you come up with the background, and you can have as many as backgrounds or talents as you and the GM decide, and then you have a certain amount of points that you add to these backgrounds, which in that game you would add to the dice rolls. But in this, it would apply to column shift. So, for example, if the GM's like, okay, so we'll sit down, we make up your character, and you come up with 3 different talents right off the bat, and I would look them over, and depending on the background of your character and the talents you pick, I would assign a column shift of +1 to 3 maximum to these talents. And that's
Okay.
how I would use them in my games. I kind of like that way of doing it. It puts more emphasis on those talents, especially if you're using like normal humans. So if we have a talent that is for wrestling, for example, and obviously it has its bonuses listed in the book, but there's other situations where it applies too. And maybe if you have a character that, let's say you made up a character that was his whole life he was a WWE wrestler. Obviously he's going to I know it's not real wrestling, shut up. But he's going to know, stop looking at me. He's going to know how to do certain moves that are realistic and dangerous and know how to escape, make holds, things like that, and actually apply it. So maybe he should get more of a bonus than just the +1 in certain situations. So
I could see that, and I mean, I did something similar in the original game. There was a talent called Scholar, and basically, Scholar allowed you to get an additional bonus towards a particular talent, and I adapted that to my game, and in the Golden Age source book, and basically said that you could have a Scholar of talent. So you would have, like, let's say, for instance, Scholar of genetics.
yeah.
So you would have +2 column shifts. The most you could have is a +2. That's sort of, I did that version of it. My talents are a little more expansive than just your standard. Like if you do military, depending on the branch of military you're in, you might have other little bonuses. Like if you, for instance, if you were special forces, you might know how to make improvised explosives, jungle training, that sort of stuff.
Navy SEAL,
yeah, and that would be within the write-up of military the talent.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I've just used standard stuff. I tend to make fun of the Mystic Origin talent, because Mystic Origin to me is not really a talent so much as it's an origin is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, so it'll say something like so and so is an enchanter in dark arts, therefore the very definition of a mystic origin. So people will go, talent. Well, according to the game, it is. It's like heir to fortune. According to the game, that's talent.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. I think the magic, well, we talked about magic on an earlier podcast, and I personally think the magic system in these type of games is kind of wonky and broken, to be honest. Yeah. And even in the DC role-playing game, the magic system in that always, I look at it, I'm just like, magic characters just don't work in these type of games, and it's hard. I understand it's really hard to convey a good magical system that doesn't just look like, hey, it's a power, because DC's one is, well, let's link this to this, so basically it's a power, but it's a mystical origin power. Shh, don't tell anyone. So
I have 2 characters that I came up with. We talked about this a little bit in the last week in the Secret Origin stuff. At some point in the next year or so, I'm going to run a game, and it's going to take place in the aftermath of the heroes not getting back from Secret Wars. But I have 2 characters that they're old Marvel characters that I adapted from a couple different sources and basically used spells from Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that's nice.
All of their spells are like Eldritch Bolt or Eldritch Dart, and it's Magic Missile. I actually call it Magic Missile. You have like the first circle of powers, the second circle of powers, different levels of spells, like web casting for web, and and I went through and did that, and talk about how the characters are experts at Dungeons and Dragons and have adapted their magic system in order to be able to use it. They have to study their spells once a day in order to be able to use them.
Do they had spell slots, or they would have an unlimited list, or based on ranks?
I gave them, I think, probably like And you got to realize, none of the powers are more than like good or excellent. So you're not talking like, the ability to bend reality to your will. You're talking about, I can cast a web spell that covers a 10-foot by 10-foot area, and you get stuck at excellent strength for it, or cloud kill, I think I used the spell mount, which is to summon a horse.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is a series of books, and let me preface this by saying it's a very adult-oriented series of books called Creatures in Caverns, and it's about a group of players who get stuck in an AD&D type fantasy setting. And when I say adult-oriented, it deals with adult themes and language and so on and so forth. And it's really it's not everyone's their cup of tea. But the long and short of it is, there's a magic user in the book who continually uses the mount spell as like an attack weapon. He'll cast it and like drop horses on people, or use it to distract creatures so they can escape, rather than actually using it to like summon horses to ride away on. So it's insane. But that's where I got the idea to use the mount spell. It's crazy.
Well, cool. All right, we're a little over the hour mark, so we try to always keep these about an hour long so people don't have too long of a listen. And I know people like it around 45. The feedback I've gotten, 45 minutes to an hour, is a little over, is good. So we're going to actually cut it off here. We're going to thank everybody for listening. Go to classicfaserip.com to check out the episodes for the backlog. You also can go to iTunes, look up Classic Faserip Podcast. We're available. If you go to our website, you can find a link to grab us on Android Podcasts or Google Podcast, whatever the heck it's called. But you can grab the RSS feed and just use your favorite. I have plenty of people that just use their favorite podcasting app that they want to use. So whatever you have out there, you could probably find us on and enjoy us, and try to leave us feedback on those things. Don't forget to write us at askthedm@theevildm.com. Yeah, I still have to look at my email address because I never remember it. It's on the screen for those who need to write it down, this whole entire episode. And Stephen Watson wants to know how long before I can replay. It'll probably be up on Monday as a replay. Usually it takes a little while for YouTube to transcribe a live feed, anywhere from 1 to 24 hours. And then I usually publish it when I edit the actual audio, so the people who have the audio podcast can either do this or watch the video. So in case where we reference material such as this that we referenced, they can listen or go to the YouTube video and look at what we're talking about, in case they're like, well, what the heck is Keith talking about or Vince talking about?
Go make your Norman characters now.
Yes, of course. I'm not going to put up the graphic that said Norman characters. That was a mistake. Shut up. Anyway.
Are they English? Is that what it is?
Yes, they're English characters, correct. Anyway, we're going to bid you adieu, and we're going to launch off into space and say Excelsior.
Until next time.